and that kind of stuff, doesn't register with the administrators, the woke folks. They just don't get it. So it finally required a federal law to save women's sports in the United States. So that's an example of just how nuts that ideology is for people. And that's, and again, it takes over very, very slowly. A couple of people come in until they have seniority, and then they start running it. And that's what's happened to MKP. It's not the damn board. The current board they're fairly new. So it started years ago, little at a time. And some of the men who I really respect and love in MKP, they spotted it 10, 15 years ago. One guy who, his name is Frederick Marx, he spotted it 15 years ago, and he wrote up a whole elaborate paper on it to document it, identifying how wokeness was coming in way back then. So it's not like you can point to somebody that's doing it. It's like in the board, they just had 4 new, and they elect themselves. They elect the next group that's coming in. So they elected again. I think it's probably 4 out of 4 of the most woke people that they could find, and there's like 20 people. A couple of conservative guys applied, some of my friends, and they ignored them completely. They had the chance to balance the board, and they completely blew it off and brought in more politically correct people. So it's like this has been going on for a long time. It's very subtle, very hard to see. So I'm trying, I'm laying a lot of stuff out for you guys here, but I'm trying as best as I can to articulate what it is and the danger. I quoted a book called From the Melting Pot into the Fire, and then the next word is multiculturalism. And this is a guy who I know, he lives here in Ashland. I know this guy. He's terrific. He made his $1 million doing, setting up a bunch of tech startups, and he used it to live his mission, which is he went around the world. He went to 40 different countries, and his task was to study what makes societies work and what makes them not work. And what makes them not work is multiculturalism, which separates everybody because it's all oppressor oppressed. So it separates all those people. And when they separate, they become somehow enemies with each other. And what works is the melting pot where everybody comes together and they become, part of one shared vision. That's what happened in the United States. It's one of the reasons why the United States became so powerful and amazing. So I tried to...
Bill, I was just want to disambiguate that word because I know a lot of people their ears may prick up when they hear multiculturalism is bad, but the word is deliberately ambiguous. I think it's a weaponized word, and it can mean whatever you want it to mean. It can mean the melting pot, which sounds great, and it can also mean sectarian violence. So it's a word that's not super accurate in its deployment or definition. So yeah.
Thank you for that clarification, because there is some healthy multicultural educational things that we used to have. And then it got distorted into propaganda, and and I was surprised to see Jens Hayek, the author of that book, use that word multiculturalism right in there, meaning many variations of that come into societies and separate people. Okay, enough on that.
I've got so many questions and personal examples that I could just dive into, but I know it's not about me, because when we're talking about the impacts and the ideas that get smuggled into trainings, like
go for it.
I've felt that on my training, definitely. I can remember being there quite vulnerable. All right, I'll talk to it. Remember it was a Sunday morning. We'd been through the ordeal of the day before, and feeling like we're coming out the other side, but in a very vulnerable state. I remember this man getting up to start to pontificate about the evils of Andrew Tate. That's kind of where he started, and then went on to give these cliched sort of pantomime interpretations of masculinity, and was pointing to this is what toxic masculinity is, and it's all the patriarchy, and was referencing statistics that have been debunked, but saying that the reason women get paid less than men on average is because of sexism. And I had enough fire in me at the time to challenge this guy to the point where it basically derailed his section. Someone else had to come in and get him back on track. But it was so obvious to me that it was political indoctrination. It was very subjective what he was pushing. But to really vulnerable men at that time, I was kind of disgusted that you would use such a sacred space to push any kind of agenda.
Yeah, thank you. I just got another letter from a guy. He told the same damn story. I actually alluded to it earlier, where the leaders can get away with saying that stuff, even though it's not in the protocol. And they do.
Yeah.
Consistently.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how they've gotten absorbed into the system, and they're feeling so powerful that they think they can, and they are getting away with it.
Well, you wrap a lot of these ideas up and make them sound nice. It's very difficult to challenge them, yeah?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, no, some of that early ideology is quite appealing to young people, sophomores, you know.
It is, and I also think about not just the ideology of that being taken on, but also the counter to that as well. The men who believe that actually, you know, patriarchy is good. Patriarchy creates safety. Patriarchy creates a container for people to be able to operate and behave safely in. I mean, like, there is an element to toxic masculinity, but there's also positive masculinity. And, you know, being able to talk about what positive masculinity, what you like, is almost like a negative thing these days. And to raise that in the room or ask people for what their favorite masculine trait is almost waving the red rag, like no one has anything to say in case it's the wrong thing. And I kind of go, if that's true, if you can't speak to what positive masculinity is, but everyone can point out toxic masculinity, I'm like, well, surely that makes it then difficult for a man to be able to say, hey, what are the traits that I choose to have? You know, it can have shadow traits by default, but who am I choosing to be? And if I'm choosing not to be that, but I can't choose anything else to be, what are my options left to be other than more feminine? And, you know, maybe that's a man's choice to be more feminine than who he is, or more spiritual, or more any of the aspects that he wants to be in himself from the archetypes. But how does a man then sit there and go, what are the traits that I choose to be to actually be the best version of myself that's true to me? Do you have a position on how to be able to pull those traits out without having somebody else write them off as being wrong?
That was a brilliant statement, Jess. I mean, you got it there. You already answered your own question brilliantly. Yeah, you know, if you got the guts, take a chance on, you know, speaking your truth.
I really am bubbling hearing all of that. I want to chime in so often through that, but I've been given strong instructions to listen, Andrew. Just sit there and listen. So that's what I'm doing. But there are two things that came up there. The conclusion you landed at there, Jess, sounds a lot like a phrase that Jordan Peterson came up with, love him or hate him, harmlessness masquerading as virtue. And when I heard him say that, I felt so called out, because that's a state that I was in back in the day, believing that by being harmless, I was somehow a better person than all of these masculine, aggressive individuals. And I'd love to touch on the term toxic masculinity, because I remember the first time I heard that back in 2015, 2016, and asking for clarification when I first heard it. And the initial origins of it might have been legitimate. Like there are aspects of masculinity which are toxic, and that's excess aggression, and it's a failure to be in touch with one's emotions. So there are legitimate claims against masculinity, and some aspects of it are toxic, but people don't have the capacity for nuance broadly. Like, as this term spread throughout society, it became shorthand for, oh, men are bad. Oh yeah, of course they are. Men are toxic. Masculinity is toxic. Didn't you know? And it's that groupthink that can happen through a weaponized phrase like toxic masculinity. And similarly, like, it overlaps with DEI, like diversity, equity, and inclusion. They sound lovely, but look under the surface and there's communism hiding or whatever. So yeah, I'm fascinated by language and its evolution, and the overlap is crazy though. Like the number of ideas that this collides with, and the gender thing is obviously the biggest, and the biggest lightning rod is the gender issue. And I wonder, like, I don't want to throw you under the bus, Bill, but if you can talk to some of the impact of these ideas, like